to steal from the Empire? You just walk in like you belong. They're so proud of themselves, so fat and satisfied. They can't imagine that someone like me would ever get inside their house.
Tell me about the moment that you found out that Cassian's story was going to go beyond Rogue One. Like, was it a phone call? Where were you?
I don't know, because it took time. First, I received the phone call saying, would you be happy to explore the possibility of doing something, in this new long format we're exploring for Disney Plus about Cassian's background? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I mean, to be honest, I never thought it was going to happen. I was like, oh, yeah, this is one of those calls that you get. And we'll see if something, like, they were very cautious on the words used, And I'm glad it was like that, because it took us time to find out exactly what we wanted to do, This idea of visiting the 5 years prior Rogue One, it's quite interesting, because it's close enough so I can do it. And, it's not a kid, it's not like a teenager, it's like I can do it. But at the same time, is enough time to have a transformation, to create an emotional arc that can walk us through the awakening of a revolutionary. It's enough time to start with a character that doesn't know he's capable of what he does in Rogue One, and that's something that came out later. When Tony pitched me his idea. And I thought it was perfect. I thought it was strong and interesting and bold and risky. And that's when I started celebrating, when I realized, holy shit, we are doing something. There is something here. And that was like 4 years ago. So it's been quite a long time,
Yeah. I love how you said it was 5 years before Rogue One. So in your head, you were like, I can do this, because I heard that you were actually concerned that you were going to look older.
Well, I mean, not just concern. I mean, I am older. I am older. There's no way to stop that. But
did you address or talk about that at all? And how did you prepare, for your comeback to Star Wars?
I mean, not much, because it's a convention, right? I mean, that's what we do. It's like, it's what it is, and it's more in the work you can do in terms of the behavior of the character, that you can feel that childish kind of approach, to his everyday life, to his decisions. I've been, thinking a lot about okay, if the guy is so sure of what he needs to do, and he's trained when we meet him in Rogue One, and he's a man on a mission, how can we show someone way more immature? How would he relate to others and to fear or to risk, and that's when your work can be about that, and can help on that. Also is on the writing, the writing of Tony portrays a very young and kind of confused Cassian, when we meet him, he doesn't know what he wants. He's in a very cynical moment of his life. He's just surviving and living every day in a very selfish mode, and then hopefully the change will start to happen, and he'll start growing and getting to that place where he ends up, willing to sacrifice everything for a cause,
Right. It's so interesting, how you're able to step in and explore, how you were saying how he relates to fear and sort of his maturity level. I think that's so cool. And Tony's writing is so brilliant. I want to ask you about that. But because this show spans 5 years, obviously leading up to Rogue One, season 1 is the first year, season 2 is the next 4. Do you know how this story ends, and how much are you given before you sign on?
If I know how this story ends, you mean the first season?
Season 2.
Oh yes, I know. I know where it ends. It ends the day Rogue One starts. Definitely, and that is it's interesting, because you never approach storytelling like this, we know what the end is, but you know what the end is. Everyone knows what the end is. So, I mean, the beauty and the many chances or possibilities that we find, the freedom we have, is in how we get there, not where we get. It's like when you do a historical piece. Everyone knows an event, but I love those films, when that are about a real character or an event that happened in history, and you watch a movie about everything you don't know, all the intimate journey, the choices made for something that happen, something that happens, and it's interesting because it kind of like resignifies the event. I think you're gonna go back to Rogue One and you're gonna see it differently after experiencing Andor, because you'll get to know what he means when he says, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. Now you will know what he's talking about. He talks about a dark past. He says in Rogue One, I've done terrible things for the rebellion. Well, we'll get to know what that is, and that's the story we're telling you.
Yes. And the story that you and Tony are telling together. I mean, when I was watching it, Diego, I was like, it feels very dark than what we're used to seeing in Star Wars. Like the tone feels very adult. Like he was like drinking out of a flask. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. What conversations were you and Tony having as far as tone goes? Because it's so different.
Well, we were asked to be different, Tony Gilroy wouldn't be here if we were not supposed to be different. The idea of this show is that it definitely is darker, is greedier. It's more of a spyish thriller, with that kind of mystery and darkness that brings. We can be political. It is about politics. There is a lot happening in the galaxy, and we can tackle that. Yes, we have to be ambitious in terms of the adventure and the action, and the big scope in like the big scope in science fiction that Star Wars represents. But we can also be the other, we can also explore other tones. That is what the long format brings, We have the time for 4 films in these 12 episodes, basically. So we can move from one to the other. And the idea was to make sure that once you think you know what the series is about, once you think you know which characters you're going to be around, what's the tone going to be like, we change, we transform, we go somewhere else. And the series will keep having those jumps. So we hope people are entertained till the end, because they don't know what's to come.
Yeah, no, totally. It's gonna be like such a wild ride. Do you and Pedro Pascal at all have like a friendly Star Wars rivalry now that you're in this TV format? Do you guys talk about your characters ever meeting?
I couldn't have a rivalry with that man. He's just pure love, Pedro is like, every time I've seen him a few times in my life, and he's been the kindest in every time, and so sweet, and feels like, he feels like a brother, already. And I know him very little. I don't think so at all. It'll be the opposite. I'm sure we're gonna go out and get drunk and talk about the experience and how crazy it is sometimes.
People are standing up.
First of all, congratulations. I know that you've actually auditioned for other Star Wars roles before.
How do you know that?
And now you have one. So I was wondering if you would, talk to me about maybe those other shows. Like what have you auditioned for in the past, and maybe talk more about that.
Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna spill the beans like that. I have auditioned for other Star Wars. I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I've always sort of try to find my role or my place within the galaxy or in the universe, just because I'm such a big fan. And I really think that I'm sort of happy. I'm really happy, actually, that I didn't get those roles and that I got Bix instead. I think she's so powerful. And and so fearless and yet so caring, and she's quite complex, and her dynamic with Cassian is so interesting and so fun to play that I'm excited I ended up getting this. I will tell you that the one that I didn't get, I was very upset about, and I ended up skydiving, and I remember being like, leave it on the plane, and then I just jumped off, and I never kind of thought about it again.
Wow. Love that. Isn't it so funny? Like we we attach ourselves to outcomes so much, but then it ends up working out so perfectly.
Yeah. I think it's a good lesson that things don't happen at you, but happen for you.
100%. I'm such a strong believer in that. And that's why it makes it even more exciting for me to watch you in this role. I know that you also wanted to get a Bix tattoo, but you were nervous that maybe people would see it before the show came out and it would give it away. So now with the show coming out, are you thinking of getting that tattoo?
I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to do it. I don't know exactly what. I originally wanted to get just Bix because I just think it's such a cool name. And I remember telling that to Tony, and he's like, you can't do that. No one knows your name yet. What are you doing? And I was like, oh, true. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what I'll get. Maybe like coordinates or something, or something to do with that world.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's talk about that world more, because you definitely explained more about Bix and how, she's fearless. She's so much badassery to her. And I really love her dynamic with Andor. And so I wanted to ask you about rather the backstory that you built with Diego, because it feels like there's a lot of tension between Cassian and Bix. So I wanted to ask you more about that.
You're like, what's the tea? Tell me the tea.
Yeah, let's spill it. Like, what's going on there?
I think they're childhood friends. I mean, we had so many discussions, Tony, me, and Diego, and I think without going too much into detail, because I don't know how much I can talk about that, but they are childhood friends, and you can almost feel the tension comes from trust being broken and rebuilt over the course of many, 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 many years. And I think Bix is at a level of sort of maturity and stability where she runs her own show, and she has this great career. She has what she's always dreamt of having, which is this Sal Yard all for herself. And she's the boss, and she wants to protect it. And that stability to her feels safe and at home. And that's kind of why she has him in her life. And then Cassian always just comes around and goes, I need you to lie for me. I need you to do this, or I don't know what to do, or help. And I think she has this deep love for Cassian that she sort of can help but protect him and love him, because there is so much history there.
Oh, I love it. Well, I can't wait to find out more about, those two characters and how they're involved with each other, and yeah, all that rich history. That's very exciting. You did mention that you're a huge Star Wars fan. And so so am I, and my favorite Star Wars moment of all time is actually in Rogue One, when Vader comes out. And so I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite Star Wars moment? Or maybe one that you really love?
I do think the ending of Rogue One is probably cinematically is so incredibly impactful.
Yeah.
And really is the reason I pinched myself when I got this role, because I could not believe that I was going to work with the guy that wrote that and created that. I think that has to be my favorite moment. I know I almost want to say another moment because I don't want it to be about Rogue One, but it truly is just so impactful.
I love that. Well, obviously you brought up Tony, who is just so brilliant, and the writing, and I've been talking to everyone today about the tone of the show and how it just feels so dark and so different than what we're used to seeing. There's this scene that Bix is in, and it just felt very adult to me. I was like, whoa, I've never seen that in Star Wars before. It just feels like we're seeing things that feel very adult that I've never seen in Star Wars before. And so I was wondering if you and Tony, were there any talks or conversations that you were having about tone, or what notes were you given as far as tone goes? Because the tone of the show is so cool.
Yeah, I think tone was very much set by Tony and the conversations and even rehearsals that we sort of had that he was a part of. And also our directors were incredible at creating that. And I think every director sort of brings their own little spark to each episode that they direct. And they all direct so differently, but yet Tony sort of remained the middle and the sort of like the firm leader that sort of led us through the entire show. So I think tone really has to go to the writing and has to go to Tony. Even I remember even conversations being had in what's it called in rehearsal, where you almost want to go to the comedy side of things, or you almost want to make things lighter because you are in this world that you're so used to and we watch it so much, and reeling us back to the reality of what we're talking about, the reality of the world that we're living in, and truly sort of trying to remove the fact that we're in a galaxy far, far away, and really honing down on the story itself that just happens to be in a galaxy far, far away.
There's fermenting out there, son. Pockets of fermenting.
You're in my net. Are you a fish? Or are you a thief?
Congratulations, Star Wars. I'm such a major fan. So when new people come into Star Wars, like I have to ask you, Kyle and Denise, like what was the pinch me moment for you on set? Was it seeing yourself in uniform for the first time? Like tell me about that moment when you were like, oh my God, I'm in Star Wars.
Oh, it's funny because you see, I sort of wish I could be like that. I was geeking out all the time, but I wasn't a Star Wars aficionado. I had never seen it. What was my pinch me was when I was in talks about this role and I thought, I don't know if this is for me. I don't think it's my jam. And then I read the scripts and I was like, hang on, you're telling me that these scripts, this writing is going to be in space, like this is going to be in Star Wars, and then it changed the whole game for me because I had kind of written myself out of this kind of thing because science fiction isn't my thing and also theater is my thing, and it takes a lot to draw me away from the theater onto screen because the parts are better for women on stage. And so, I mean, the money, but I get my thrills from playing great women on stage. And then I get sent these scripts and he tells me about this great, really dark woman that I could play in Star Wars. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get to do both things, like really great work, really great character building work, but it's going to be in Star Wars. But it really is only like the last 2 days that I'm having pinch me's. And when I saw the trailer and I was on a poster and my nephews are going nuts and I was like, oh my God, I'm in Star Wars. Yeah. So now, and when people like you who are really into it and you say, welcome to the Star Wars world. And I think, oh my God, I am genuinely being welcomed into this thing that you guys have been fueling for so long. Like, it's amazing. And one more thing, we were interviewed by a 10-year-old earlier, and he has his own podcast. But we were quite emotional because this is the only show you could do where a 10-year-old and a 75-year-old could get together in a room and be as excited as each other about Star Wars. Like, there's nothing else that does that. There's nothing that connects those two generations in the way that something like Star Wars does. So it's a total privilege now for me to feel, oh my God, it's amazing.
Yeah.
A little overwhelming, but
that was so beautiful to hear, though, that it's like you're living through the pinch me right now. Kyle, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. The pinch me is happening currently as we speak.
Yeah.
This last week has been nuts. But like when we had started filming, it was in the middle of the pandemic, and so a lot of the context of what we were doing was changed and shifted, and so I was on set and kind of been overtaken and swept away by Tony's drama that he had written. You know, it's a socio-political commentary while also being a thriller in space, and also a family drama, kitchen sink drama. It goes, you know, it's vast and it's intimate. And I was just kind of like, wow, this is just like a really good project. And then we're on this unbelievable set that had been built that was like 8 acres long and wide. It was a whole town. And there was this group milling about before we'd started filming, and I was walking through and they parted. And there was a line of stormtroopers that was about 30 deep. And I just froze and just lost my mind. I was like, oh my God, no, I'm in Star. Oh my God, I'm in Star Wars.
Yeah, seeing stormtroopers is sort of undeniable. You're sort of like, yeah, okay, that's hang on.
Yeah, and the other thing was like, I have it was wonderful because Syril has a journey where he kind of loses a lot and he has to go back home. And he spends a lot of time with his mother at one point.
So bizarre.
And she's like feeding him breakfast, and the cereal is like space cereal, and the milk is blue. And I was like, oh, well, no, of course it is.
You forget that it's in space. Like I visited that set. So I remember going, oh, I really want to see inside Cyril's apartment. And I went in and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, it's like everything is like an apartment in real life, but it's not because it's in space. And those cereals blew my mind.
Yeah, it's wild. I would love to drink out of blue milk any day. Or have blue milk in my cereal rather. How do your characters relate to Cassian, and how I feel like what's driving them, because they're so loyal to the Empire, and I was curious as to like what's driving them and what their goals are.
Well, Dedra is super ambitious. Like she's so proud to work for the Empire, but she's surrounded by men that aren't doing a very good job. And I think that what I love about it is this kind of initial introduction to Dedra is like, woman in a man's world, and go on, sister, we believe in you. And then you realize, oh, but she's a fascist. Do I still believe in her? Do I want her to succeed? It's like, I feel like for Dedra, in order to succeed in a regime like this fascist regime, you have to prove yourself by doing things that get you the acclaim. And for her, catching Cassian Andor, because nobody believes her when she's saying this is a problem, and everyone's saying, oh no, stop it. These privileged men are all telling her, silly woman, shush, shush. But she knows, and her kind of objective becomes, I am going to bring him in. And when I bring him in, I am going to be up there. Like she wants to take over the Empire.
Yeah.
And she needs, friends. That was such an evil laugh. It was so good. It started right down here.
Kyle, what about you?
Villains, right?
Yeah. Syril. I mean, we were talking earlier about how we're kind of adolescent villains.
Yeah.
We're not fully formed yet.
Yeah.
Which is the exciting thing about playing these characters. And for Syril, he breathes ambition. He's desperate to transcend his station. He's desperate to get to the top of the ranks of the corporate security sector. And he's actually really desperate to get into the ISB.
Yeah.
And he's drunk the Empire Kool-Aid, but actually his morals are actually quite understandable. We've all been in a situation where we think everybody's like not doing a good enough job, and somebody's been murdered. Like, shouldn't we investigate that? Like, you could see how he's doing the right thing, but in the wrong climate.
Yeah,
I guess. And Cassian exists as a foil for him, and I think as much rigidity and constraint that exists within Syril, the freedom and the kind of messiness that Cassian represents is just so infuriating.
Yeah.
And he senses, like Dedra does, that there is a potential for that to turn into something greater and something that needs to be stopped. So he's just like a dog with a bone with Cassian. And then once he finds Dedra, then that's that is a
it's like a meet cute. That's what somebody said earlier. A journalist said, tell us about the meet cute.
A little villainous meet cute.
Like, oh my God, that's so good.
Which would probably
I love it. The Star Wars people.
We were saying that it's like at the tailors, because Syril is really obsessively tailoring his uniform. And then when I went to my first fitting, I said to the designer, I was like, oh, I really think we need to tailor this. And he said, I can't believe you as Dedra and Denise have said you need to tailor this uniform because Syril and Kyle both needed, that's like a really major thing. And I was like, oh, we're gonna get on so well. We're gonna live in a perfect little house full of really tailored and clean. Yeah, it's gonna be everything.
Controlled environment.
Yeah.
As long as everyone thinks I'm an irritation, there's a good chance they'll miss what I'm really doing.
What are you really doing?
Genevieve, I'm so excited for you. When you were cast as Mon Mothma in Revenge of the Sith, did you ever think that you were going to be like playing her this many times?
I mean, never. I mean, no. It's such an extraordinary and unique opportunity to get to revisit this character a number of times in my career, and to get to play her at different times in her life. And now in this moment in Andor, to really be able to get to develop her and to discover her in a way that we've never seen her before.
How does Mon Mothma's story relate to Cassian's? Because I feel like that's something a lot of people are going to be wondering, like, while watching this series.
I think that's really understandable, and that's an exciting part of this series, because we know that it is the prequel to Rogue One. So we know that Mon Mothma introduces Cassian Andor in Rogue One to Jyn. She introduces him as Cassian Andor from Rebel Intelligence. So she introduces him as a spy, and she sets them off on this mission that is so important to the Star Wars lore, and yet ultimately fatal for them. And I've always wondered what it was for her to ask that question of Cassian, to send them on that mission, knowing that they could probably die in doing that. I've always wondered what she'd been through as a woman, what the sacrifices she had to make before she was in that position of leadership, and to be able to ask that of people. And so they are connected, and we know that we have to get to that point. We start Andor where they're not even on the same planet. They are so, and they're certainly not connected in any way with any rebel network. In fact, what's interesting about Andor is that there doesn't seem to be a unified rebel network at all. This is the beginning of the rebellion. There are only whispers of rebellion. And so each of them has to effect change in their own way. And so Mon feels quite isolated at the beginning of Andor. She's working within the Senate, within Empire, to try and change. But I feel like she's been doing it for so long. She's so tired of the opposition. She's so tired of hitting that wall of power that is Palpatine and his allies. She's been so ineffective that she has to reach to a world that is murkier, that is less clear. And I think that is something that is interesting about where we start Andor, is that it is less the goodies and the baddies. It is less black and white. It is less empire and rebellion. And there are layers within it. It is murkier. It is grayer.
Mm-hmm.
They each have good, they have good intentions, or perhaps good intentions, but they have to enter and make maybe questionable decisions.
Yeah. As a Star Wars fan, it's super gnarly to hear you talk about Mon Mothma in this way and sort of walk us through what her POV is and how she's feeling, because I know you're so connected to the character. I wanted to know, Genevieve, because for a lot of people, when they saw Mon Mothma, it was in Return of the Jedi. So how do you connect the dots from Andor to Return of the Jedi as far as Mon Mothma's story goes?
Yeah, that's what's so exciting. And it's really interesting to have the opportunity to almost go backwards, to fill in a way that you never get to, right? So you know, when I was first allowed to step into her shoes, or given the chance to step into her shoes, I was a very young actor, and was one of my first jobs. And I remember studying that scene in Return of the Jedi, like over and over and over again, trying to really trying to work at her voice and her syntax, trying to feel maybe where she was from, you know. I was so great. And then each time I have gone back to play her, I do go back and watch that scene, because it's Caroline who originated her. Caroline Blackstone, with George Lucas, created a woman in the early 1980s who was a female leader of a rebel alliance. That's extraordinary. And she's a woman I continue to want to stand up for. So when I go back and watch that scene each time, it kind of grounds me in who she is. And so I hope to, and this is the great hope, that when we finish the 2 seasons of Andor, that it will walk us into Rogue One, and that everything that we discover about this woman within Andor will kind of fill in or influence how we watch those performances going forward in the storytelling arc. I'm hopeful that we can do that, because I was always curious about her. So my curiosities from her from that very first time still feed into the work I try to do with her now.
It's all so exciting. I remember when I love that you brought up Caroline Blakiston, because when you were actually casted in Rogue One, she was very elated and actually said, I would love to get tea with her one day. That would be a hoot. And I was wondering, did you ever get tea with Caroline, or would you like to exchange notes with her if not?
Do you know, just as the pandemic was starting, her and I went, and I had never met her before. And we were, without knowing, we were at the same meeting in a hotel in central London. And she said to me, "You're Genevieve O'Reilly." And I said, "I am." And she said, "I'm Caroline Blakeston." And I was like, oh my gosh. And it was this wonderful moment. And the two of us just hugged each other. And I was saying, I think you're just extraordinary. And we were each other's biggest fans. And it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. Yeah, I have such great respect for her and her work, not just in Star Wars, but the other work that she has done as an actor. And I feel very fortunate and very grateful that I can step into her shoes.